This week, the Dudaei Reuven, very special Dudaei Reuven, very beautiful Dudaei Reuven. Dudaei Reuven, first of all, he asked the question. He says, I don't understand why Chazal say about the word Tzav, it means act zealously now and for all generations. He said, what do you mean? This mitzvah of the sacrifices, it's not for all generations. Second of all, every mitzvah you have to act zealously. What's special about this mitzvah? And why is it for all generations? It's not. It's only while the temple is there. Then he asks another question, and this is going to lead him into a discussion of Pesach. This week, Parshas Tzav is always read the Shabbos before Pesach. This week is Shabbos Haggadah. By the way, people want to study the Haggadah with me, you could come to the yeshiva on Shabbos from 4:30 to 6:50. You don't have to stay the whole time, but you don't have to stay all 2 hours and 20 minutes, but we're just going to be sitting there and studying the Haggadah together. And you can drop in for 10 minutes, you could drop in for 2 hours and study the Haggadah with me. Okay, so, but it's a custom on Shabbos Haggadah to study the Haggadah. So that Haftorah, we read, it states in the Haftorah that it says, behold, I will send to you Elijah the prophet before the great and mighty day of God is coming. And and I will turn the hearts of fathers to children and children to their fathers, lest I come and I strike the earth. So lest I come and I strike the earth. So what does that mean? So what does that mean? So the Dudaei Reuven introduces now the commentary. What is the source of the 4 cups? Now, most people, if you ask them, what's the reason why we drink the 4 cups of wine on Pesach night, most of the people will turn to the idea that there are 4 expressions of redemption in the Exodus story. And that's true, 4 or possibly 5. But the Jerusalem Talmud gives other explanations. That the Jerusalem Talmud gives actually 3 other explanations. One is that it corresponds to the 4 cups of punishment that God will eventually bring onto the nations of the world. It says, it corresponds to the 4 cups of punishment that God will in the future bring upon the world, because thus God says 4 times kos. And also it corresponds to the 4 cups of comfort that God will give to the Jewish people. So what does that mean? Why is our redemption going to be associated? Why are we drinking the 4 cups of punishment on the Seder night? So then he asks another question. He says, another question that he asks, he always usually asks 4 or 5 questions before combining them. He said that what was the first task of Moses with the redemption of Israel? He said, it says, Vayomer Moshe Elokim, Moshe says to God, I'm going to come to Israel and I'm going to say to them, the God of your fathers sent me to you. And they will say to me, what's his name? What should I say to them when they ask me, what is your name? So God says to Moshe, tell them, I will be. I will be. So the question is, I will be with them in this distress, and I will be with them in another distress. What kind of answer is that? He says, come with me. Why should I go with you? Well, I'll be with you when you're having these problems, and then in the future, you're going to have more problems. I'll be with you then. God, that's what God's saying. Wait, so we're going to go with you because we're going to have lots of problems? What kind of answer is that? What kind of answer is that? Imam B'tzarazu, I'll be with them in this distress, and I'll be with you in other distresses. What kind of answer is this? Doesn't make any sense. That's what the Dudaei Reuven asks. So Moshe responds, why do I have to tell them about other problems? So he said, you're right. Don't tell them about the other problems. Just tell them, just say, the God whose name is I will be, send me to you. Excuse me. So then the commentaries say, why does Moshe ask for his name? Why does Moshe ask for God's name? And what does it mean that God's name is I will be? So this passage also has to be understood with the passage that we read that happened that on Pesach night, on chapter 12 of Exodus, that Moses called to all the elders, and he says, take a sheep to your family and slaughter the Pesach, and then dip the hyssop and place it on the lintel. And God passed over Egypt, and he passed over the doors, and he didn't allow this destroyer to come into their homes. So what was the reason why Moshe had to put blood on the doorpost? Was so that the mashlich, this destroyer, will pass over the house of Israel. But this is very difficult because the exodus from Egypt was by God. It wasn't by a destroyer. God is the one who let us out of Egypt. The Gemara says, and we say this in the Haggadah, Ani v'lo malach, I am not the angel. Ani v'lo saraf, I'm the one who did it, not anybody else. And so therefore, why does God need a sign for to put on the homes? And so therefore, also we need to explain, it says in Exodus 12, the next 2 verses later, you have to guard this, and this will be a law for you and for all future generations. But it's not a law for all future generations. The only time we put blood on our homes was in Egypt. So why does it say in the Torah, this will be a law for you and for your future generations? But it was only a mitzvah there. So these are some of the questions, and you could ask all these questions at your Seder. You sit down on your Seder and say, why does it say, I am not an angel? But it was an angel. It was a destroyer. Why do we need to put the blood if it was God? Also, you could say, you can ask this question. It says in the verse, you shall guard this commandment of placing the blood on the lintel for future generations. But we only did it then. And why does when God say Moses before he goes and he says before he goes to the people, he says, tell me your name. God says, my name is Eya Asher Eya. I will be that I will be. I'll be with you in this distress. I'll be with you in another distress. Why do we need to talk about other distresses? And then the last, going back in reverse order, the 4 cups. Most people say, oh, the 4 cups is from the 4 expressions of redemption. But the Jerusalem Talmud says explicitly it corresponds to the four cups of punishment that God will mete out to the nations of the world. Why? Why do we need to drink to that? Why do we need to drink to that, as they say? So the Dudaei Reuven answers this question by saying that really, what is this about? When the Torah tells us to place the blood on the lintel, what's this passage about? That this is really, what do we say when it says it will be law for you for future generations? It doesn't mean that you have to put this on your lintel every year for the future. It means this, rather what it means is this promise that Hashem gives to you, that he's going to redeem you like he did for the Jewish people in Egypt. What this is a promise. By you putting the blood on this lintel now, you're showing that Hashem is promising you that every single time that there will be a distress for the Jewish people, God will redeem us. God will redeem us. God will be with us to redeem us. That is what's the reason why we have the story of the Exodus. Why do we tell the Exodus story? To give us the strength to recognize, that when we are in a place of distress, God can redeem us. Just like God redeemed us from Egypt, so too God can redeem us from whatever distress we are in. That is the point. And the Dudaei Reuven makes this point by saying, what does Rabbi Gamliel say at the Seder night? Rabbi Gamliel is taught, whoever doesn't say these 3 things has not fulfilled the Pesach, has not fulfilled the mitzvah of the mitzvah on Seder night. Whoever doesn't say these 3 things on Seder night has not fulfilled their obligation. And what are the three things he said? He said Pesach, Matzah, Umar. He says the Pesach, Matzah, Umar. What's the Pesach? Pesach Shayu Avosenu Ochlen. This is the Passover that our ancestors were eating in the time that the temple was standing. Al Shema, because God passed over our homes when we were in Egypt, and He saved our homes. So why do we have to say that? Why does Rabbi Gamliel say that you haven't fulfilled your obligation on Seder night if you don't say this phrase? It seems so esoteric, so arbitrary. What is the basic point? I mean, some people probably here, or even on the Zoom, might skip this phrase. We forgive you, but Rabbi Gamliel says you haven't fulfilled your obligation. What is the basic message? Rabbi Gamliel is basically saying, whoever doesn't incorporate this message that the Seder night is the belief that God can and will redeem us from our moments of distress, that He saved our homes, that God passed over us and saved our homes. Such a person is missing the story of Pesach. This is the words of the Dudaei Reuven. He says, Ikar mitzvah ta'aseh sha'amir ta'agada b'la Pesach. The main aspect of the positive commandment to recite the story of the Haggadah on Pesach night is not to talk about, the main purpose is not to talk about the history of what God did for us when we left Egypt. That's not the point. That's not the point, but rather the point is to awaken within us the promise, to recognize the promise that and to be aware of all the miracles that happened to our ancestors in all the generations and all times, but rather, therefore, for this reason, the mitzvah is not to talk about the Pesach that happened in the time of the temple, but rather that it is something that is capable in our generation today, as we say in the Haggadah, not of our forefathers alone did God take out of Egypt, but us and our children. And we have to look at ourselves as though we ourselves left Egypt, meaning to say that the miracle has not stopped. The miracle has not stopped. And the purpose of the telling of the story is to establish within us this source of faith in the heart of every Jew, and to say, not God didn't just pass over the houses of our ancestors in Egypt, but God is making it so that all of our houses have this protection. And so we see from here, it's really the Dudaei Reuven and the Baal HaTurim at their core are saying the same thing. What are they saying at the same thing? That we're saying that we don't need to be actually in Egypt to feel the power of Egypt. We don't need to bring the sacrifice to feel the power of the sacrifice. It's about the concept. And just like the concept is Torah study with the sacrifices, the concept of here is to recognize that the miracle of Egypt takes place with us all the time. That God is our source of redemption. God is the source of our miracles. God is the source of our strength and our hope. That's what the Dudaei Reuven is saying on this passage. So let me just pause for a second, see if anyone has any comments on this. Hold on.